Welcome to the PIPCast Podcast, a programming arm of Princeton Publishing. We're your hosts, Rachael Levay and Allegra Martschenko. And in this, the second part of our episode with Kate Danser, we are talking about how to handle pay negotiations and monetary raises around performance reviews. Kate, we are so excited to be able to continue this conversation with you and are grateful to you for your time and expertise. So I will just go ahead and jump in. We would like to talk with you a little bit about monetary raises, and especially kind of thinking about raises around performance reviews. So we're curious, how do you ask for raises around performance reviews? And are there materials you can compile and share to help demonstrate your value in ways that are tangible to those who are making the decisions around pay negotiations?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think the first thing is determining the right time to
Mhm.
discuss with your manager. Every organization's a bit different. All the places that I've worked, we clearly distinguish the performance review is separate from the salary review.
Mm,
And so I think identifying if you are in an organization that distinguishes the two, or you tie it together and you should actually be talking about your salary while you also have your performance review. The philosophy behind separating the two, just to kind of illuminate that for everybody, is to really have them as two separate conversations to allow the performance to stand alone, and then have a separate discussion about salary, so nothing's really diminished. But as far as the timing, ask your manager. And this is,
mm,
I am well aware that not everybody has a manager that might not be approachable. So
mhm,
if you are one of those people that doesn't have a manager that's unapproachable, then you can either make a first attempt by asking that
mm,
manager and giving them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they will respond differently than perhaps in the past. If you find that you are not able to get a clear response from your manager, then I would suggest going to your manager's manager, or the head of your department. Someone should be able to give you a clear response, or HR. If you have an
yeah,
HR, they should be able to give you a clear sense of process where that fits in. Once you've identified the right time to have that conversation, you could be concurrently figure out, what are you asking for? Are you asking for an increase that is within your current role? Or are you asking for what I would call a promotional increase, which is you want to be moved out of your current role,
mm,
um, and you would like a promotional increase, which typically through most organizations, an increase within your own role, your current role, is going to be smaller than if you're asking for a promotional increase because that you're moving into a different position. Um, I would say it's a little bit, my view is it's more straightforward if you're asking for a promotional increase, because then you can look at the job description of the role that
mm,
you're being asked to be promoted into. You can inquire about, if it's not available, the salary bands. You have some sense of what the number is. Um, and again, do you want to be asking for a specific number, or do you want to be asking for a percentage? Really, just again, equip yourself with what's the level that you're of the ask. Um, some people come in with just a very general ask of like, hey, I believe I am performing at a higher level. This is the job description for the role above me, and I would like to be promoted. And that's it. There's no specification about monetary. It's purely about the promotion. Again, figure out what's important to you. Um, if it's all of the above, it's then engaging really in a discussion. And it can be with your manager, it can be with HR, it can be with your department director, but really, again, gathering information to build a case. And I think compiling information, again, as I said in the last episode that I was on, really sticking to being rational and
mm,
not emotional is always the best way to go. Create a basis for what the ask is, provide evidence to demonstrate that you warrant this, that you've done your research, that you're knowledgeable. Um, and really correlate everything to the ask. Um, as far as if you're asking, going back to the ask of you're looking for a higher than above increase in your current role, If you've been with the organization, you usually will have a sense of kind of what the standard increases are. So you could, if you're asking for an above average increase, you would want to provide evidence that your performance is above average.
Mhm.
So as far as, again, like specifics, like the specific number, you want to go in and ask for a specific number. That's up to you to figure out. However, I think you should also be really clear about kind of the, if I don't get this number, this is what's going to happen, kind of being not a threat, but being really clear about managing the expectations of, I see other jobs available that are the same job doing the same responsibilities and it pays X. Kind of making it clear to the employer, I am well aware of what's being offered outside of here, and I believe I'm not being paid market value. I believe I'm doing more than what I'm being paid. Really, again, just rooting it all in facts and evidence that you found.
That's really helpful. And that also kind of brings to mind a different question that is a little bit off the topic of post-performance reviews, but I'm still going to ask it because I love your thoughts on it. Like there comes times in career paths where like you might have an offer from another organization. And I mean, I think we all have been in that position of not being sure if you want to take that other offer. And how do you kind of navigate and ask from your organization for a bump because you want to stay?
Mhm.
Because that, like, I don't know, I've got experiences there. They've been varied in sort of how
Mhm.
that's received. But like, do you
Yeah.
have advice for folks who might be in that position?
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Also been there personally. I think just being really clear about what are the things that the employer would need to do in order for you to stay. I think,
Yeah.
it's not, for some people, it's not always about the money. It's
Mhm.
about, I think honestly, a lot of times it's not about the money.
Yeah, I
It might
think
be
that's
about the
true.
responsibility, or like I
Mhm.
know enough about the other university presses and that like people are doing a lot. There's a
Mhm.
lot of added responsibilities, but not deduction, like reductive of the
Yeah.
responsibility. So I think again, just having clarity, one, being clear when you go into the conversation. I have this other offer. I was doing it because of X. I really want to explore. However, now that I have the offer, it has made me realize I really would like to stay here.
Mhm.
However, these are some of the things that are making me consider leaving, and being really
Mhm.
clear about articulating what that is. It could be workload, or it could be as simple. I say simple because I do think the salary is often the most simple one if the budget
Yeah.
allows it, and saying, I'd like you to meet this salary, or, it's not necessarily about meeting the salary, but I would like to see X more in my paycheck, or PTO, or whatever,
Mhm.
as far as what you'd like to negotiate in the package. But if it's about the work responsibility, it really is about advocating for yourself. And the reality is sometimes you've already been having those conversations, but no one has been motivated enough to actually
Yeah.
do the work to make the adjustments. So it is sometimes getting that offer and putting a bit of fear in your current employer and saying, look, like, I'm really serious. Like, things need to change. I know I'm a valued employee. And in order to stay here, you've added this on my plate and I enjoy it, but this hasn't been taken away, even though you said it would be. So could we please come up with a plan to model what's this going to look like to reduce my workload? Again, be a partner in it. I think it's
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
about like holding your employer hostage, but it's really
Yeah.
about advocating for yourself. But realistically, there are times where the motivation's not there till there's the fear of, oh my gosh, this person's going to leave if we don't make adjustments on our end.
Yeah.
And so I think just really going into that conversation with clarity of what you want, as well as possible paths to achieve that, particularly when it's about workload, um, and really help being a partner in that, I think really endears yourself to the employer to want to work with you.
That's so helpful. Thank you. Um, so we also wanted to ask a little bit about, I think a lot of us have been working under kind of challenging financial circumstances for a long time. Like, I mean, my career started in 2007. So like the big recession of 2008 was like right as I was becoming a professional. And so I think for a lot of us, the most we've been able to expect is kind of a cost of living raise. And so I do you have some thoughts about how to kind of separate merit from cost of living? Because I think organizations often come in with like, good news, you 2% this year. Hooray. And how do you kind of accept that and also kind of press for more just in general?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a widespread, right? Like a lot of employers, I mean, inflation doesn't just hit, inflation also hits the employer, right? So we all know like the cost of producing books has gone up like 20 to 30%. So like we can't just make more money. So I think thinking about, I think you can go in with kind of levels of ask. So with the merit, so some places do separate a cost of living or a COLA increase separate from a merit. They might have different pools, which is how, just going to put out there, a lot of universities work is there's two different pools of money or buckets of money. And so I think really, one, showing that you're aware of that is really important, and saying like, hey, I'm aware that there's a pool of money for cost of living, and then there's a merit increase for those that warrant additional money, and advocating for yourself. Again, this is where I think, particularly when you are already hearing rhetoric around tight budgets, I'd be cautious in approaching this and when I say cautious, it's just not being like, I want $10,000 more. It's kind of like, I would, again, quantifying or keeping it rational of kind of like, I've assumed 10% more work in the past year. Is it possible to get a 5 to 10% increase, something kind of provide a range, showing you're flexible rather than giving like a firm number. I think often really helps to show, I am flexible. I really want to stay here, but I also want to be compensated. My compensation should align with the increased responsibilities, and advocating for yourself in that way. I think, again, if you do have knowledge of what increases have been in the past, and that's, even if you're new, you can talk to other people. There's, I will say some places will tell you you're not allowed to talk about each other's salaries. You absolutely are. It's not against the law. It's actually the inverse. It is actually, employers actually can't restrict employees from talking about salaries. So just something, again, to know your own rights. But so yeah, talk to others that have been there longer if you're not aware of kind of what's the standard merit increase like for average performance, what's the merit increase if you're above average. Just get a sense of what those numbers are. And again, you can go into conversations disclosing you have that level of information, like show your cards a little bit. And that again proves the rational the approach that you're taking, that your ask is rational, and that it's not emotional. So, and I think again, like what we talked about in the last one is think outside the box. Sometimes merit increase, that's again just purely compensation. Think about benefits too. You could
Yeah.
also think about other things that might help support you that fall outside of the monetary.
That was something that I was going to ask you about. During the pandemic, when things were quite tight, I had success asking to kind of leapfrog a tier in PTO. We have like a tenure-based system. And I've never been quite sure if that was an abnormality or something that other folks could try to do as well. To ask like, can I go up a couple of tiers in PTO when there's not an opportunity for compensation increase?
I don't. So what I don't think it's abnormal for an employer to grant it. What I think is abnormal is for someone to advocate for
Oh,
themselves. So
interesting.
kudos to you, Rachel.
Yay.
I think a lot of people have the thoughts about it, like, oh, it'd be so nice if I had extra PTO. Or a common thing that we did at PUP was, as we know, the pandemic really just like threw everybody's lives in upheaval, and particularly those that have care, whether it's child care or elder care. You needed flexibility with your schedule. So we are informally, we've piloted a 4-day work week because we've had enough staff that have
Yes.
asked for it. And so what we did promote was we are willing to work with people on the flexibility that they need in their schedule. And just slowly over time, we realized we had engaged with enough people in discussion about, well, what do you think would work for you? And they said, if I could work 4 days a week and actually have three days to
Mhm.
myself, that would really help me focus on my personal demands. And so we now have a cohort of people where we can say we're informally doing a 4-day work week pilot, and it looks different. Some people are doing compressed schedules. Some people have figured out other ways to kind of spread out their hours throughout the day
Yeah.
in kind of an unconventional way. But those things typically with an employer, again, like if you just start engaging in a discussion of like, hey, this is the challenge I'm having right now. This is what I think might work. Um, Typically, most employers are willing to at least try and say, let's give this a try for 3 to 6 months, and we'll collect
Yeah.
evidence of if this works for you, if it works for us as the employer. We're not setting it in stone, but let's go collect some data and see if this is a solution that might actually work. And as I mentioned, it's something now at PUP that we're thinking, the 4-day work week, how can we make this work for the whole organization? Does the whole
Yeah.
organization want it? So it really could blossom into other things that
Mhm.
folks don't really realize. But that all goes back to just ask. Ask the question, but again, ask it rationally, ask it with clarity of what you're asking for. The worst thing is they're going to say no, but sometimes you're actually giving ideas that no one else has thought about because you're
Yeah.
bringing your own unique perspective, your own lived situation, that really that others might be experiencing as well. So I just encourage people to take, I know it's scary sometimes and it's awkward for sure, but it's just take that first step and just ask the question and go from there.
Yeah, I like your emphasis on this clear communication, collaboration, and not just with an HR person or with your departmental manager, but also with your coworkers.
Mhm.
You talked to several people at Princeton University Press, and you saw actually collectively there was this need for flexibility in work. And I'm sure that it's very easy to say, I'm the only person overworked at my organization, or I'm the only person struggling with my workload, and you are probably not. And being able to talk freely with your coworkers, I mean, that'll give you the information you need if you're looking for monetary raises, cost of living raises, anything like that. But that will also allow you to think flexibly, about, well, actually, it would help us if we had a 4-day work week. It would help us if we were a bit more flexible with our hours. Here is something that we've gathered a little bit of data ourselves on, and we'd like to take to the organization and say there are several of us who want to rethink our workload structure and also have done some thinking ourselves. And we'd like to start you off on this answer. And you get back to that sense of like partnership where you really feel like you're working with your organization and that they care about you and they're willing to come to the table and chat with you.
And those examples also benefit the organization, because I think if people are avoiding burnout and finding respite and ways to kind of be present in their caretaking responsibilities, that also benefits the organization, because that means they're kind of bringing their full energy when they're at work.
Totally. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like this is such an optimistic space to leave things in. I love it. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for chatting with us for not 1, but 2 episodes. We really appreciate all the advice you've given, and we know that our audience will as well, both before and after performance reviews all year long. And thank you also to the audience for joining us for this episode. We post new episodes of the PIPCast podcast every other Thursday on YouTube and our Substack. You can tune in for our next episode about being an acquisitions editor with special guest Dawn Durante, Assistant Editorial Director at the University of North Carolina Press. Find us on Twitter at PastonPub, or check out our website, www.pastonpublishing.wordpress.com.